Hey guys, so today I want to share with you a localization system that I've developed for Unity. I've developed this for an older project and now I'm just like recovering that implementation and making a single package that we can easily implement or integrate in existing projects. So let me show you what I've got so far. And first of all, localization system, it's a way of automatically translate everything in your app or project to different languages. So usually you have a language selection screen, and when the user chooses another language, the entire app should localize all the labels and strings that you are using throughout the app should reflect the current selected language by the user. And let me show you. So this is just a demo scene of the system. So imagine that you have like a language selection screen like this. You have only two languages. So we have the English and Portuguese. We have this button here. You can see that right now everything is in English, which is the default language that I selected for this demo. And when I press this button, you can see that the label is also in English. And if I press the language Portuguese, so if I select the language Portuguese, you can see that this is now translated into Portuguese. The language name is always using the language. He's always using their own language to write the name, so it doesn't change. But you can see that the button also changed, and when I press, it's saying it in Portuguese as well. And if I change to English, it changes again. And so it basically what we are seeing here and is that it's automatically updating the UI. I mean, not only the label, this label in the UI and the button, and also strings that are coming from code, like this one here. This one here is set by code, and I'm going to show you how to set up your project and use all this system in your own project. Also, before that, let me just show you, because I've already added this project to GitHub, so where I have the instructions for the project. So to set up the project and how to use it. Really simple instructions, and I still need to give some more work into it, but you have like this whole setup that you need to follow to set up the project. But either way, what I'm going to show you now is how to follow this step by step. So the first thing you need to do is to add a localization.csv file. And this file usually is something like this. Let me show you. So this file should go in the editor directory inside the assets folder. So right now the system only works if this localization.csv file has this name and it's located on this specific directory. I can just change the system later so that you can just say, okay, this is my localization file. So you don't need to just search for the file on a specific place. But I don't have that implemented at the moment. So this, you can see that is a CSV file. And now let me just show you. So I'm going to open this. And this is a really simple file. And basically what you need to have in this file is a key. And this is the key that we are going to use throughout our application. So this is like the independent key that we use that will translate into the correct language when we are using it throughout the application. So you can see that I have the key label language, and then I have a translation for this key when the selected language is English, and I have a translation for this key when the selected language is Portuguese. And this is the key that, for example, I'm using on this label here in the UI. Then we have the label hello, which is the one that I was using here when we press the button, and we have the label for the button. So the idea here is that you should add a column for each one of the languages that you are supporting in your app, and write some keys, like unique keys for each one of the labels that you need, and add the translations for each one of those labels. Now, after creating this document, so you place it inside the editor folder in your project, and then you can come here to the window, localization system. It will open this window right here. I already had it here, yeah. So you have this window, the localization system window. You can see that it's draggable, but you can also like dock it into the interface. And when you open oh, now it's giving an error, and this is really important. Just discovered this now. You cannot like process the CSV file when it's open on another software. So you need to close it, and that's why we have this error. So the way this is developed is that when you open the localization system window, it will automatically process the file. Once again, you can see that I don't have anywhere to just like drag the localization file into this. It's really easy to make now that I think about it. I just need to add that in the inspector of this window. But right now, since we don't have that, it only works when you have the localization.csv file inside the editor folder on the project root. But I'll change this in the future. So you can see that when we open the window, it automatically detects the file and processes the file. So you can see that it detected 2 languages and 3 keys, which is correct. So we have the English language and the Portuguese, and we have the 3 keys, one for the label, one for the button, and one for the other label that appears here. If you have this window already open and are making changes to the file, so you are like making changes to this localization file, you can just press process file to update the languages and the keys in the file. And after doing this, you need to press the update resources. Now, when you press the update resources, it's going to do 2 different things. First, it's going to create inside the resources folder, it's going to create another folder called locales, and inside the locales, it's going to create an asset file for each one of the supported languages. So you can see that I have an asset file for the English language and another one for the Portuguese, and which has like keys and values. So you can see that it's using the keys that we defined, and for each key, it's using the correct value of that language. And this is the first thing that when we press the update resources, this is the first thing that it does. And the other thing that it does, it generates a set of constant strings that we can use throughout our application. So you can see that this file was auto-generated. So this was generated by the tool automatically. So it basically goes through the CSV and through all those keys and translations, and just creates these strings, these constant strings that we can use in our app. And we'll see just in a moment how we are going to use this. And so this is the first step, adding the localization.csv file and adding the localization keys, adding this file and just updating the resources to create the assets and these localization keys script. Then after this, let me see here. So you had the localization CSV file. After this, you need to define the locale settings. And this is the step in the whole setup that I'm not really happy with it, because you still have to put in some work into it. You need to configure a lot of stuff, and I'm not very happy. But right now, you need to do this in order for it to work. Which is the first thing that you need to do is go to this script here. So inside the localization system, you have the script, and the first thing that you need to do is to open this local config file. And in this local config file, you have this enum called locale, and this enum, you need to add all the locales that you are supporting in your app. So right now we were supporting the English and the Portuguese, so you need to add these two here. And we have a difference between the locale and the language. So a language is the way that we write and speak and we read, and a locale is more than that. Usually, I think it's usually related to a language, but it also defines how the date formats. So if we use the year first, and the month and the day, or the day, the month and the year, stuff like that, stuff like numbers. So if the separators are dots or commas, all that. So a locale is more than a language in a way. But I remember that when I was implementing this, I did some research, and I think that some systems separate completely the locale and the language. Some of them have a language already associated with a locale, and in this case, I'm doing that. So we have locales, and the locale has a language that is associated with it. So when we are setting up our project, we need to define both things, both locales and the languages. So the first thing, you need to define the locales, and you can see that I'm using these codes here, because for English and for Portuguese, you have the language code, and then you have the country code, and you can get this code from this link right here. Let me show you. Okay, this is opening in another browser. And here you have all these codes you can see here, which are the LCID string. I don't know. And so you can see that for Portuguese, it's Portuguese, yeah. You can see we have Portuguese for Portugal and Portuguese for Brazil. And the language code is the same, but this other code is different. So it is PT for Portugal, so PT, and PT for Brazil, it's BR. And right now I'm using PT for Portugal, for example. So you need to define this here in the local. Then after this, what you need to do is define the local settings. Then you need to define the language and the language codes. And this is on another script, which is the language config. Here on the language config, so you need to come here to the language in them and add the languages to support and the language name, so English, Portuguese, and add the language code. So in this case, the EN, and the PT for Portuguese. And one thing to notice is that in the column in the CSV, the header of the columns of the languages need to match either a language code or a local code. So first, what the localization system is going to do is going to search in the CSV. No, not in the CSV. So it's going to read the CSV, set up everything. It's going to call the asset files with what you have in the headers in the CSV. So you can see EN and PT here. But then when you are configuring this, you need to have it needs to match either with the locals or with the languages. So basically what it does is that first it searches if you have an asset that it matches with a local. So for example, imagine that you have two different Portuguese translations, one for Portugal, one for Brazil. You could have a column for PT/PT and another column for PT/BR. And when we are processing the file and generating the assets and everything, basically what it's going to do is that first it's going to look for a local to see if we have that difference or not. And if it does not find an asset that matches a local, it's going to find an asset that matches with the language, which is more elegant. It's more like global in a way. So in this case, I'm using just the language code and not the local code. And okay, so this is the second step. So you need to configure this, and then you need to go to the local settings here on the local settings, and once again, configure all the languages and the local. So you can see that I have this dictionary here. And in this dictionary, so the first one is the languages. And so you add all this to configure your language. So you have the language English. You can see internal code, use this one. A reference type, you need to put the language. You need to give it the name. And this is the actual name that we are showing in the UI. Oh, now that I need to change it. Sorry. Because I thought that we were using this one. No, I don't want to do it. I thought that we were using this one, but this was my mistake. I'm not using the local name, but instead I should use the language name in the UI to show when you have the language selection screen. We are not using the local name, but the language name, and I was using this one. So that was the problem. But I'm just going to change it in the demo as well. So in the language, you need to set all this data right here, and in the local as well. So you have a name, a reference type, and the language that is associated with this local, the system language that is associated, and then you have this. I think I'm not using it at the moment. So the date format, the date separator, and all this, I think I'm not using it at the moment, but you can already add it as well. So you have the date format, you have the date separator, and this date Indianness is about is related to the date format. So now that I look at it, I probably need to have all this. So I will only need to have the date separated and this one. And from these two, I could just generate the date format. And I have an error here as well. So the date format is not like this, but like this, because now you see that I'm saying that the separator was this one, but the date format was not equal to this one. So like I said, I still have some work to do on this system, but it works. And then you need to configure all this. You can just take this from an example when you are configuring your own languages. And after this one, we configure all this. Oh, and you also need to configure the default local. So you can see here that I am on the method get default, I'm just returning the locales or the English local. You can change it to wherever you need in your own app. And so this is it in terms of setup. I know this is quite a lot, and that's why I'm saying that I'm not very happy with this. Probably what I end up doing is like generating from the CSV. I want to generate all these settings, you know, instead of having to write all the settings, just like I'm generating the constant strings that we are going to use in the application. I should probably also generate all this, but then I would have to have a reference to all the languages with all this setup. Yeah, but I think that will be the next step to extend this system, instead of having to do all this manual work of like adding the stuff here in these enums, adding the stuff here, adding all this. I could have like some assets already prepared for all the languages and all the locals, and when you add the CSV, everything will be generated automatically for you. But that will be in the future. And so this is it. Now the system is all set up. And now what you always need to do is, and now I'm going to show you here on the demo script, what you always need to do is that when the app starts, you need to set the default local. And this is just to load the default local and update your entire app with the default local that you are going to use. And you can also register for the event local change, as you can see here. So I'm registering to this event, and so to know when the language changes, so if you need to do something else. So you can see, like, for example, here what I'm doing is that when the locale changes, I'm just deleting the text from the label hello. So when we are seeing hello here, let me show you. So this one here, when I change, I'm just using that event to just delete this one so that I can press and say it again. But yeah. Oh, and this was another problem. So you can see that I'm using the locale name here, and I shouldn't use the locale name. I should use the, not the locale name. I should use the language and the language name. This is the correct one. And yes, once again, I'm just making changes while I'm recording, but okay, so you can see now English and Portuguese. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so that's the next step. You always need to load the default locale when the app starts. And then you have two ways to using this system. One way is to localize UI text components. So when you are building your UI, you can see here, for example, here in this label. So all the labels in your UI that are going to be translated, probably all of them are going to be translated when you change languages. You can use this, you should use this component right here, which is called localized label. So you just need to add this component to the same object that has the text component. And you can see, you can update the keys if you change the keys while you were working. And then you can see that you have like this search field right here, where you can search for the key that we are going to use for this label. So we had three different keys. One of them was label, you can see label language and label hello. And you can see that it gives us here the key and the translation of, I think it's from the default locale, I'm not sure, but I think this is the translation of the locale, so you can have an example of what this key corresponds to. So in this case, I want to assign this key here, label language, so you can see that select language, and that's okay. And now what this component does is that when the app starts, it will automatically set the correct translation to the label, and also every time when the user changes the app language, it will also update automatically the text value. So you don't need to worry about all these components, because otherwise you need to register for the event. Okay, when does the language change? And then, or each component should register to that event, and you need to have a component to do that. So you have this component that already does all that work for you. So you just select to the label and assign it, and you can see here selected key, then you can clear and just select a new one if you want. So you can see that I've done that here on this label. I've done that also on the label inside the button. So you can see that I have the key button hello is the key selected, and this one does not have anything because we are going to add the code here, the text here by code. So that's one of the things that you need to do in your app. So localize all your UI text components. And this has already a few years. So I'm using the text component, the legacy one, and not the Text Mesh Pro component, but I can easily make just a component for the Text Mesh Pro. It's not that different. And another way that you have to use these localized strings is in your code. And in your code, you have an example here in the language system demo. That, for example, when we press the button, when we press this say hello button, I'm going to set the value to this text hello label that says hey guys, or in Portuguese. And I need to set this by code. And to set this by code, what I do is that when the language button is pressed, no, not this one. The language button is, sorry, the language button is the one that we are selecting the language. So when the button hello on click is pressed, I call this method, so local manager.localize, and then I access the localization keys and I just ask for the label that I want. And this is the file that was generated. I showed you at the beginning. This is a file that is generated from processing the CSV file. So I'm only generating that file so that we can use, and we have all the keys here in your code for you to use, because otherwise you need to use the keys by hand. You need to type each key, and that wouldn't work if your project gets bigger and bigger. So label hello. So when you are doing this, you know that when you are using this string, that string will come translated according to the selected language. And I think this is it. So as you can see, I still have some work to do with the system. So I think the thing that is bothering me the most is this whole complex setup that we need to do at the beginning. But I'll eventually automate all this setup. I'll automate all this setup so it becomes easier for everyone that's using this system. But my idea was to share with you guys this system right now, because I think since it's usable, you can import it into your own project, and with just a little bit of effort, you can have your project working with multiple languages in a few minutes. So I think it's still useful, even though it's not all automated as I would like to have it. And this is it. I mean, if you have any questions or anything, just say something. If you want to contribute for the project is on GitHub, so you can contribute and make all these changes yourself, and we just integrate in the project and make some new versions. And this is it. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.